All right, and once we have the not found middleware in place, we want to do the same thing with the error middleware. And let me just briefly kind of go over the biggest differences between the two. And then most likely, once we start setting up the controllers, we'll swing back because it's going to be easier for me to show you. But effectively, the main difference is that not found one will be looking for requests that do not match any of our current routes, correct? Like I just said in the last video. But when it comes to the error handler, it's actually looking for the errors that are happening in our existing route. And you'll see that in a second because we'll throw an error here in our home route. Therefore, we need to follow the rules of Express. And the rules for the error handler are following, where essentially we'll do the same thing. Set up a function, error handler, in the middleware folder. We'll create that as a function. But in this case, we're looking for 4 parameters. So right away, Express will know if you're looking for 4 parameters, that means that first one will be error. So it will pass in that error. Now, in our case, in the beginning, we'll just log it, just so we can see whether everything works. And we're going to go with pretty generic response, where we'll go with return 500, so status 500, and then in the JSON, we'll just set up there was an error. Now, we still want to import that. We still want to use JS extension, and I'm pretty much going to stop leaving this step over here, since we'll have to repeat that step pretty much every time as we're working here in Nodeland. I think it at some point becomes self-explanatory. And we want to place this one last one. And again, it's going to be easier for me to show you once we have some async errors already in our controllers. So that's why I'll put that one on ice for now. But please, please, please do place this one last one, even though at the moment it might not look like a big deal. And if you watched my Node Express course, eventually our error handler pretty much is going to look like the one we were using throughout the course, the one that we were taking from project to project. But in this case, we'll set up everything from scratch. So yes, we'll start with a very basic one. And then each and every time we have that custom Mongoose error, that's when we'll handle that. So this is really up to you. If you want to save yourself a little bit of time, you can copy and paste the code from there and you're good to go. If not, we can build it together because that's essentially what we're going to be doing. And yes, the last step over here is showcased with async errors. So like I was saying, once we already have some logic in the controllers, it's just going to be easier for me to showcase the difference between the two, where not found is going to be looking for all the requests that do not match any of our current routes. And then the error handler one will handle the errors that are happening in the existing route. It might not sound like a big difference, but trust me, it is a big one. And therefore, we want to place the error one all the way at the end. So let's actually go through the steps. So we want to create the error handler one. Let's just go here with error and then hyphen handler. Now that is going to be JS. And as far as the function, I'm going to go again with long name because my preference in the server is to have these names like this. Basically, I can do the auto import in that case as well. And the reason for that is because that clearly signals to me what is happening. Of course, this is an export default, so technically I can name it whatever I want. But in my case, I like this middleware part because that way I can clearly know what the function is doing. And then since I set that up in the file, in the not found, I can right away use the auto import. As always, that is just my preference. You don't have to do that. So that is just a side note. And therefore here I'm going to go with const and then error handler, and then middleware. And like I said, this function is going to be looking for 4 things. So the error first, then rec, then res, and then the next one. So now Express knows, okay, so this is going to be a error handler. And then the first step is just console logging the error. And then we want to go with some kind of generic response. So res, and let's set up the status. That still will be 500. Basically a general server error. We'll go here with 500. And then let's add a JSON one. And then let's set up a message. And we're going to go with, what was the message over there? Let me double check. So there was an error. So that's the one that I set up. Might as well use that one as well. So there was an error. And then let's export this one. So export default, and then we're looking for error handler. And now let's hop back to server.js, look for the not found one. And right after that, again, we're going to go with app.use, and then we'll pass in the error handler middleware. And we just need to make sure that we move this one down. And it looks like that in this case, it actually right away also added the JS extension as well, which is really, really cool. So now we can test it out. And the way we'll do that is in the home route. Effectively, we'll throw the error. So say throw new error. And I mean, the message here is really unimportant because we already have the response in place. There was an error. So let's just say here error. So we can save ourselves a little bit of typing. So let's go back. Now I'm not going to be looking for /hello. The route does not exist. Actually, I'm going to be looking for the home route, and we should see there was an error. And if that's what you see on the screen, beautiful. We're moving in the right direction. And then in the terminal, you should see the error and notice that is coming from the server.js. And with these two middlewares in place, now we can start setting up the connection to MongoDB.